And I'm recording and wishing everybody a happy Full Sail Friday. So anybody that wore your extra Full Sail gear, I appreciate it. We got 1, we got 2, we got 3, we got 4, 5, 6. What do you got over there? The glasses? I like those. Yeah, I got my glasses. Got this little do-bobby thing we got for the parades. Some bracelets, all kinds. I'm not wearing my Full Sail socks because I've yet to be able to get that tight sock over my bad foot. But thank you. If we get a good showing, maybe we'll have to do a picture and send it to Gary Jones. He likes it when I do that. So usually I get like one person that participates with him. But this is great. I think this might be in tie for the most I've ever had. So I appreciate that. And it's fun, But if you're like, man, I don't have any Full Sail gear, next week is your opportunity to win some or get some for free or whatever. Maybe find some, because someone's gonna be like, oh, check it out, I got this cool hat, and then they're gonna leave it somewhere. And then if you watch it and it's there for 3 or 4 hours, chances are they're not coming back for it, right? So I don't know, you can try the lost and found, but it's gonna be a whole bunch of Full Sail gear. Announcement about lab this Sunday. I talked with Veronica, and because of the whole craziness of the week, we already kind of, you notice that we don't have a lecture section, and I mentioned it really quickly at the beginning of the month, but we're trying to clear that day. Lecture will not be happening. We have the Friday, so you'll have 2 days where you'll have to watch archive sessions, and then you'll have the Friday lecture that we can get any answer questions or anything like that. But the Sundays, we got enough going on that for lecture, we're not going to be doing that. This Sunday, though, is a lab, and Veronica teaches both CDC and PRM, and she's also got to be here for the entire week. So when they do that, it's like, hey, be here for the weekend and then be here for the entire week, and it's just I think it's unnecessary. So she's checking with the PRM instructor to see if he's okay with them nixing that lab. I don't know what he'll say, but I'm going to let her make that announcement. If she gets the information, I'm going to be stopping by to double check with her. So there might be a possibility of Sunday just being you get to enjoy it. That'd be pretty nice, right? You all know what you need to do. Most of you have ZBrush on your computers. You work on your computers anyway, so that could work out for you. Online, same thing. Basically, you already know your schedule-wise. We didn't have any live sessions anyway, except for Friday, so we'll do that. But please make sure you're watching the archive content. I'll try and put some more, I guess, recent. I think maybe Christmas time would have been the most recent time, or possibly last month. I think we had 3 days for week 2, and week 2 is a pretty tough week. So I'll probably put those up. So it'll be 2002s. Sorry, not 2002s. 2020, the February classes that'll be probably going up there for those extra lectures, right? So there's plenty of content there. And if you have any questions, I will be in between sessions and things that I'm working over the Hall of Fame week. I will be able to answer those, have meetings or anything like that. So I did have a really nice meeting with a student today from online section, and we talked about a lot of good stuff. And there was just a lot of, I guess, missing of information. And it reminded me of another student a long time ago. They followed along and they did everything, and I was talking about notes, and they raised their hand and they said, well, here's what I do. And this takes time, right? But if you think about how many hours we have in a week, we do have some time there. So what he would do is he'd follow along in the lecture itself and try and see what I was doing, knowing that they were actually recorded. And then he would watch them again once they got posted and take notes on them, right? And if you are taking notes, that's awesome, but make sure that you're also rereading those notes whenever you get a chance, right? So back in my day, I knew that a lot of classes still had tests, and we had quizzes, and there was one class where every day I walked in, I knew I was getting a 25-question multiple choice test every single class. That's just the way we started class. So there was a ton of studying. Now we don't really have a lot of tests. So you might take notes, but do you reread them and study that information? Because that information is great. You want to be able to explain what you're doing to other people, and you want to be able to coach and teach other people when you become the modeling lead or the animation lead, right? So you need to understand names, options, where they exist, you know, what they've changed to, and all that stuff. So what I did was I would read my notes before I went to bed. I'd read them when I woke up, and I would show up early and out in the hallways, instead of kind of sitting there, I would be quizzing my classmates and they'd be quizzing me, and we'd be talking about the curriculum. I see a lot of people not really talking to each other at all. And, you know, this is not that kind of industry. I'll keep saying, I'll say it every single day if I need to. This is not that kind of industry. You need to be talking shop, embedded into it, just engulfing your life for this short period of time, these 20 months in this type of environment, right? Just be constantly talking about 3D and what the assignments are and what you're doing and what you did to get yours done and what you're going to do in the next class, and then talking to other students, and just keep those conversations going. Also, the student I was talking to was a lot of, you know, questions that could have been answered a little bit more on the fly. So I know that there's some good overall participation in Discord so far from a couple students, but it should be all students should be in there, just in case there's a quick question that you need to ask. And don't wait for staff, right? I think that's a big mistake. Everyone's like, well, I'm gonna direct message one of the staff members. There's somebody in the course or somebody that's taken the course that can probably answer why your Z-spheres are crashing, or why you can't see your adaptive skin, or why your adaptive skin looks like Dynamesh, right? These are quick questions that can be answered by your peers instead of waiting, right? So I want you to become resourceful, use each other as much as you can, right? Create that relationship. And if you don't want to go on there because you like more of that live on the fly stuff, sign into our Google Hangout. It is there for you to use. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to sit in there and work while other people are working. And what I always did, again, just, I know some people hate stories. I like them because I know where you're at. I made sure that at least with one of my classmates, one of my peers, we were always working on the same thing at the same time. So I'd sit down and say, all right, let's do our first read if we were using today's curriculum. And then we would say, all right, we have 2 hours, let's get our first reads done. That way, if I had any questions, I knew that he was working on the same thing I was working on, and we can fire questions. It's not like, hey, let's work together. You do whatever the hell you're going to do, and I'll do whatever I'm going to do, and none of that relates to each other. And we used it to help pace each other. So that might help you out as well, right? Say, all right, cool, let's do our first block out. Let's do the Dynamesh one, okay? In an hour, we'll see where we're at, and I can give you some feedback. You give me feedback, and then we'll work for another hour. And then that way, again, you know exactly what the other person's doing, and you can feed off of each other knowledge-wise. So that would just be my tips of the week. And for any class that you're in, if you're already doing that stuff, awesome. If not, I would recommend starting, right? Find yourself a study buddy, if not 4 or 5 that you can be around all the time. Next thing I want to do, I want to kind of change gears, switch gears here a little bit, and just go over these anatomy studies. I am seeing some really sad anatomy studies, right? Where people are like, well, 2 hours, forget that, 30 minutes, it kind of looks like a leg. There you go, I'll get credit for it. I brought it up a couple months ago as a really like, holy smokes, and I showed some images like, what is this, what is this? And I think people thought, again, every time I show that stuff is what not to do, I think people look at it and go, oh, I'm going to do that, or it sets that bar. So there's a ton of information out there. I just loaded this one here, and I'm going to talk about one way. We already looked at one way, right, where you're actually starting with a sphere, and then we did the stuff. We started pulling the forms of a torso. But today we're going to look at another possible way that is less sculptural, but I think maybe focuses more of your understanding and learning on insertion points and overlap and the actual way the muscle sits to the skeletal structure. So we'll take a look at that. But no matter what, please remember at the top of that assignment, it says an écrochet style sculpture without skin. I'm getting all these ones. I can't even recognize the muscle structure. I can kind of see, all right, there's a lump there. I'm guessing that's the pecs, but I should be able to see those muscles clearly defined on the asset. 2 hours is a lot of time to sculpt something this, well, however large it is. But I mean, you're literally sculpting a torso. And even if you didn't know much about this stuff, I think within 2 hours, we'd be able to get a little bit of a stronger or just more well-developed asset. Now, you might be thinking, hey, why are you hating on me because I don't know what I'm doing? Well, if you find, again, and it says it in all the activities, that these things are taking longer than anticipated, I should have an email and we should be setting up a session and I can look and go, oh, well, you're not being aggressive enough with your strokes, or let's focus on these shapes first and then target these, or maybe use this brush because, or change your brush size more because you're trying to pull all these large forms with these tiny brushes and that doesn't work. Or, hey, stop using the clay buildup and use the actual move brush because that will establish your shape quicker. Clay buildup is for laying in your muscle striations, right? There might be something going on in your workflow. Otherwise, what's gonna happen, I'm just gonna put this out, if I don't feel like there's been enough effort put in, I'm gonna hit them with a 50, right? And incomplete, because again, this is your time to try. And I can tell 2 hours, right? That's 120 minutes of pure sculpture time. You set a timer and you say 2 hours, go, and you're just sculpting. Even if you studied for 30 minutes, which again is still a pretty good amount of time, and then sculpted for an hour and a half, that's still a lot of time to be generating shape. Okay, so we need to find out. Now, when I say that, you might be thinking, I can't do that, but I guarantee you can. I know you can get something better than some of the, I've been seeing some really nice ones, but I'd say majority have been very soft, muddy, underdeveloped, or just totally ignoring that it's supposed to be ecrochet and doing some cartoon thing. I've been seeing a lot of, hey, cool, there's a leg in ZBrush, let me grab that, or let me cut this off of one of the pre-supplied models. That will instantly get you a 0. If I keep seeing it, then we'll have a conversation with the student advisor for academic dishonesty, and we'll have that problem. I'm hoping I don't see that after saying that, but every month I catch a couple, and they always act surprised. What? No, that was, and I line up the silhouettes and where the features are that line up, and it's just a waste of my time, honestly, to have to fight that. Just don't do it. Just sculpt, learn, right? Who's not here to get better? Who's already ready to get out in the industry, get your job at ImageWorks and Sony, or right? You're ready to go. You already have your demo reel ready to go, and why are you even here, right? We are all learning, and we are ready to get better. So there's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in getting your stuff critiqued. Even if I rip it apart, that's cool, because we're going to figure out how to make it better, right? Would you rather know that you're completely off base than on base, right? Or on track with where you need to be? I think I'd rather know. So, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you get to where you're going. So let's say you're like, well, whatever you say, you're just a teacher. I don't care what you say. Get online and I just literally torso anatomy speed sculpt, and boom, there's all kinds of stuff, right? You can watch what they're targeting first. You can see here, focusing on just the main shape, right? Not really getting into ecrochet, and then starting to identify some of the forms, right? Really kind of carving them in, being aggressive. This is another thing. You got to be aggressive, be aggressive, right? So you catch that from the football? No? Okay, I was never a cheerleader. Always thought it would be interesting to do that, but just don't have faith in my tumbling skills. So, you could get into all this stuff here and watch and see how people are targeting shapes, where they're going first, how they're cutting in. And a lot of times it's just not being aggressive enough with the surface. You got to really kind of say, peck, right? Because once it's there, I can shape it to be what I need it to be. But if it's not there, it's not there. We have nothing really to work with. So this is just an example of one, and it's 2 minutes. It's literally 2 minutes of your time to watch it and see how they're going through. You can see they're now, and you can actually see when they go up in resolution, right? So they're sitting at You can see all the faceting of the surface. You can see that low resolution. Less is more in the beginning. And then somewhere around here, now it gets smoother, so they're up-resing when needed, right? Kind of really taking a clay approach to establishing those muscle forms. And they're all identifiable. That's the cool thing about an écrochet sculpt. You're not trying to hide the anatomy behind skin and fat and all that stuff. There's the lat, there's the delt, there's the pec, there's the abdominals. They're all right there. You're just making it happen, right? You're just saying, there it is. Let me sculpt that piece in there and make it look like it goes in between there, right? So, and I'm not saying yours is going to be super accurate. It might be your first time really doing this stuff, but we still should see readable muscle forms, right? Does that make sense? Okay. I mean, before I knew much about engines, I sure as hell could take apart an engine, and I knew the pieces of it. It was getting it back together was always a problem. I fixed my first truck and ended up with a whole bag of extra bolts, and my stepdad at the time was like, that doesn't look right. And I was like, you're right. Hopefully it'll start. We never got that truck running again. It was in bad shape. But, you know, get on there, do a search, tons of stuff. You see, we see some écrochet in there. Now, when you're doing it, you stay within the guidelines, right? Don't put arms in where we don't need arms. I do think, though, on a torso, the deltoids, kind of the shoulders find themselves in the arm and the torso, just like the pelvic area finds itself in the leg as well as the torso. So you might be doing a little bit of repetition, but repetition is always good. There's just a ton of stuff out there. Now, these are sculpture based. Okay, getting into sculpture. A little bit of écrochet right there. You can see all those forms, right? Just focusing on those things. Let's look at the other way. Okay. Oops. Did I close that? Oh, I did. Okay. The other way is going to be using the skeleton, and this one requires a little bit more knowledge about using subtools. But what you're doing is you're literally looking at, here's this muscle. Let me go ahead and yank a primitive into shape, and I'm going to put it right onto the skeleton structure. So I'd say as far as learning goes, if you want to learn more about generating shapes sculpturally, I would sculpt these and do that écrochet speed sculpt. But if you're like, hey, you know, I'm not there yet with my sculpture, maybe doing some of these like parts and pieces style build might work for you. So first thing you do is you go ahead and you download that. You do your studying. Zygote body is really cool. I don't know why I got to change that to open in a new tab. But zygote body shows up here. You can pick female, male, doesn't matter, because we're not really looking at the skin anyway, right? A female torso and a male torso, other than, you know, shoulder width or hip width, it's going to have the same muscle structure. So I'm seeing a lot of people do female torsos, and they're putting in all the anatomy, and you're like, I can't see your muscle, your understanding of muscle structure and anatomy. So again, pushing that écrochet. But what's really cool about this is you can come in here and you can say, well, we don't want to see that, we don't want to see that, or we do want to see that, we don't want to see that, we don't want to see that, right? And we can really kind of kick this down to where we're looking at just the anatomical structures. Let me see, I got to remember how to move in here. There we go. So I'm just using the command key and tumbling around. There isn't a tumble, so I probably want to bring bones back. Let's bring some bones back in there, just so we can see how they're attaching. Actually, I already had them in there. There we go. Now, we're not worried about all this underlying stuff. We're worried about the large stuff on the top. But when you click on the muscle, you can see where is it going, how is it attaching, right, to the humerus. You're going to have two heads of the pectoral muscle. You're going to have the clavicle head, which is the part that connects to your actual clavicle, the collarbone, and you're going to have the sternal head, which connects from the sternum, and of course you got your pec major, pec minor, and all that stuff. We're not looking at pec major, pec minor. We're looking at pectorals. Where does it start and where does it go and what overlaps it? It looks like that tucks underneath. All right, you can see it tucking underneath the deltoid. And you can see the deltoid hooking to the scapula, which is the shoulder blade, right? It's hooking to the back there. So you're getting yourself a beautiful laundry list, a nice just shopping list of shapes that you need to make. And you go, okay, it starts here and goes down to here in a nice teardrop fashion. We can see the bicep going up and underneath. You know, I messed up my back a while ago, and the doctor's like, he's pushing up here, and he's like, yeah, I can feel that. That's your bicep tendon. I'm like, no, you're pushing on my shoulder. And he's like, no, I'm pushing on your bicep tendon through in between your deltoid, right? He's pushing up here. He's trying to feel that connection. That's the connection that gets damaged pretty easily. But all that, look at, whoa, look at that one. Wraps up and around. It's pretty cool stuff. Isn't that cool? Look at that. It's actually twisted. All right, that thing goes in there and twists so it hooks into the humerus, right? I mean, it's neat. I think it's neat. And we're not looking to, you know, create all the individual muscle packs. I'm looking at these larger groups of muscles. So this will be kind of the go-to. I went ahead and I downloaded that OBJ. It is in the downloads folder, wherever you're going to have it download to. And I'm going to say, I think I saved this once already. And even if I didn't, it likes to give me problems there. We're just going to go ahead and kill this. And no, even if we got to do stuff again, that's okay. All right. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and hide that, and we're going to load in this OBJ. So we're going to do an import. When you're looking at load tool or save as, these are saving ZTLs. These are basically ZBrush specific OBJ files or object files. So I'm going to go in and just hit import. And as my computer takes off, there we go. Looks like I brought that in 5 separate times. I have to go through and delete those. Right, and we've gone through this. This asset is actually supplied to you inside ZBrush, but we cut it up for you a little bit so you can focus more on those pieces, just so you can get the pec and stuff that works. Oh no, what do I do? That's a good question. Okay, I covered it day 1. What do I do? Command N. Boom, there we go, redrop. Instantly go to edit, okay? All right, so now we've got this piece here, and we're gonna start using subtools, okay? Subtools will become very important in week 2. We're gonna be breaking that single subtool, the single body, into multiple pieces and parts. So you have to kind of have a good understanding of how this works. And it's like layers in Photoshop and your outliner and layers in Maya. So basically, we're going to be using the insert or append. Either one of these works fine. I think, well, I don't think, I remember going, they do the same thing. There is a difference, there's a slight difference. You'll find that in ZBrush. There'll be tools that do almost exactly the same thing, but with a very minor difference. Almost like somebody wrote one, and then somebody else wrote it, and they're just so hyped on their egos. They're like, well, I'm not deleting mine. Well, I'm not deleting mine. You know, and then we end up with 2 of the same exact tools. So append, what it'll do is if you've got 50 subtools, it'll put whatever the new part is all the way at the bottom. Insert will insert it underneath the active subtool. So order of operating, I mean, either way we do it isn't going to make or break anything, but just throwing that out there. Right? So insert or append at this stage, it doesn't really matter. And we're going to do a sphere 3D. Okay, look at that, done. Torso. Oh, my pen's not set up right. Give me a second. I lost my right mouse button again. Yeah, I had a feeling I did something different with it. I plugged it in and then I turned it off and then turned it back on, but I forgot that it was already on, and that might have broken it. There we go. Okay, so we have this in. Now we're going to do this several times, or we're going to replicate the piece that we're working with. Okay, so whatever you decide to start with, let's say it's the shoulder, let's say it's the pec, let's say it's the abdominals, you know, this is a good way to go. You could use Dynamesh on these, but since we're just using the piece to make the muscle structure, Dynamesh kind of doesn't really do anything for us. So I would just go in here. Pec, done. Look at that. It's that easy. And you go to put another one, right? And how accurate is that? No, I mean, that looks terrible. So what you're going to do now, you just I just pancaked it a little bit so it's there and it's ready. I'm going to switch to draw. BMV is going to bring up my move brush. All of your brushes have a 3 keystroke, unless you act like 3 keystroke combination, unless you make your own hotkeys and things. But we're going to go ahead and just move. All right, and if it's too far off the surface, right, be smart with it. All right, let's go back to draw. Now I'm going to leave it on default resolution because I don't really need to do much with it. I don't need to subdivide it or anything like that. And that should be a lot smaller, as we saw in that picture, right? It sweeps up pretty aggressively. So I'm going to make my brush a little smaller and just start bringing that in. And of course, smoothing as we go. Okay. And now, yeah, remember, getting it done becomes the first and foremost check, right? We get it done. We take this asset and we say, okay, cool, this is at least completed. It has all the muscles. Then we do another iteration pass where we tweak and really make sure that things are there. Because sometimes you can't really see if everything's lining up until you have multiple pieces in play. So we'll go in here. We'll repeat the process. We're going to go insert. We're going to do a sphere 3D. We'll go through. Scale that down. Bring it up to the shoulder. Okay, let's go ahead and flatten that a little bit. Let's rotate it. Okay, now we're ready to switch back and we can start to manipulate. And all the time I can go in here and say, okay, cool, there's a deltoid. I can see on the scapula, I see that blade right there. And then it's attaching up to the clavicle. Oh, spinning real good. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Okay. So now we go back to our model, or keep these up next to each other. Just so you can look at it, but you know, we studied a little bit. Now I'm going to start using that option kind of pull. That's going to help me just pull in a direction. Make my brush a little smaller. Smooth it out. But all the time, this is the deltoid. I'm working on the delt, which is the shoulder. And if you want now switching between on the fly, you can use your subtool and just say, hey, I want to work on this. But if you hold Option, you can click on the tool you need. And you'll notice I'm really kind of moving my camera around, making sure we're looking at the surface from different angles, not just always front and side and all that. Let's check out and say, okay, cool, where are we at? You can see that wrapping around and kind of around that bicep, in between the bicep, right here. Gonna smooth out that a little bit. The Shift key. And if you're like, well, you know what, I want to get a little bit more of that visual direction on the muscle form, all right, you can get in there and start using things. Maybe you can draw that and curve it underneath, right? Just give yourself that nice visual target. And then you can go, oh, cool, well, now I need to push that up underneath. And we're going to smooth it out. All right, and then we can come in, we just keep following this procedure. We say, all right, cool, it's time to do the abdominal. Looking at how that comes in and attaches. If we want to take this again and pull on that one, we can. If we want to lay a new piece in there, we can. We'll just keep the same thing going on. And if you want, you also have see-through. I don't really use see-through for much, but if you were like, hey, I want to look at something, it allows you to see through, work on it, you know, saves you from having to bring something in. Some people really like it for doing stuff like we're doing. I'm gonna go insert, add another one in there. Now we want to go symmetrically, unless you were doing just half. I think for this is going to work better. All right, remember, we always have our reference. You can see that it's a little wider towards the top. I'm kind of making room for the obliques. You can look over here on the side. And we can come up here and we can just pull that out a little bit. We can switch to the pec. Sometimes it gives you a little bit of trouble there. Brush needs to be a little smaller. Maybe a little bit more volume. Okay, we just kind of keep going through this way. You know, I can't do anything but really learn the name of that as I'm working through it. I'm like, okay, I'm working on the pec. I need to shape the pec like this. Let me look at the reference of the pec or the pectoral. All right, let me go and look at the abdominals. All right, I'm shaping the abdominals. You're just kind of repeating those. The abdominals attached to this part of the rib cage. They also, the obliques attached to the pelvic bone, right? Be verbally saying these things as you're going through, that'll also help you study. Right? But within a couple hours, you might stumble. Okay, I want you to understand that a lot of what we do, this is hard for when I taught 3DF. Everybody thought that everything had to be some new, different, difficult procedure. And I said, no. We are replicating a lot of things, easy things, simple things that when put together in different ways appear to be complex. So once you get one muscle form shaped out, what new are we doing? We're inserting a sphere, we're shaping it down with the major tools, and we're grabbing the move tool and we're finessing it and putting it in there. Then we're going and inserting another piece, we're scaling it down, we're moving it, and then we're shaping it. We're putting in another. So our procedure replicates. So it should be getting faster and faster as we go. And once you get into an arm, there should be even more structure there. And when we get into a leg, we should be even faster and get more done. Okay. So I understand your first ones might be a little rough. Your second one should be a little faster. Your third one a little faster. Your fourth one even a little faster. Even though it's different pieces, we're more familiar with the program. And actually what I'm seeing is that they get worse. Right? People are all jazzed in the beginning and they do their, hey, cool, look at this torso. And then they get to the arm and they're like, an arm. And then they get to a leg and they're like, 10 minutes, you know. And we should be seeing the opposite. We should be getting better. Time is a thing, which is why we only spend or should only be spending the allotted time on them. So set yourself a timer. All right? How many of you think you're going to approach it this way? Or for future things, yeah? I think for learning it, this works out really nicely. Sculpture, it is difficult figuring out. I mean, sculpture is an art-based thing, so you might be a technical artist, so therefore visual art is a little bit difficult for you. And at that point, you know, we got to figure out how do we get the most out of that, and what's the best thing we can do with that. All right, cool. Let's go into the other stuff. We're going to look at the next phase or evolution of your blockouts. I want to show you again some end targets so we know where we're going. We'll talk about why it works, why it doesn't work. Okay, so I just dropped in a couple in here. That is not a blockout. That is not a blockout. Okay, these are some blockouts. Okay, so let's talk about what works and what doesn't work. Now, first off, I have to point out, this was a week 1 submission. Look at how many assets are there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do you have to do 6? No, how many do you have to do? 2, a walk in the park, right? You have more time, so I will be looking at the artistic quality of those 2 builds a lot harder than somebody that had to pump out 6, okay? How many first reads do you have to do? 1, how many do you see there? How many do you see there? 2, 1, 2, right? So you only have 1, so you've got more time to really put the effort in, Okay, this is, again, I mentioned it the other day. This is why it saddens me when I get late requests, because we've really kicked down the amount of work that needs to be done so you can focus more on that work. But let's take a look. All right, these are all pretty decent for 6 submissions. These are pretty decent. We'll look at the first reads first. I love what they did here. They went through and they identified all the major pieces. They even went a little further, right? Even though this is part of the shirt, in some cases, we identify the pieces because we might see a need to model that as a separate piece. I would have liked them, since they did this on the collar, I would have liked to have seen the folded cuffs. I don't care who you are, modeling or trying to sculpt folded cuffs out of a solid piece of geometry versus making the cuffs separate, right? A lot harder. It's a lot harder to achieve that nice contrast in the shapes. So those I probably would have identified. But other than that, I mean, they even put in the little lines for the pants. They got the buckle, the loops. Loops again, belt loops. These are things that I would probably model separate from the pants themselves. So knowing that, if I was doing a first read on those, I probably would have identified those as separate pieces, especially on a simpler character, something that has less things to be identified. They broke down the shoes, right? The face, they did the ear pieces. They didn't do the glasses, would have been nice, but again, we're looking at 2 fully fleshed out assets for first read. So had this been the only one, yeah, I would have been like, hey, where are the glasses? Those are a major piece for the face. I probably would put that. Maybe the nose also sometimes gets modeled separately. I would have wanted those, right? The cuffs. So this one could have been pushed, but the shapes themselves are really clean. You see how they really identify. There are shapes and lines and curves and arcs that make your character design what it is. And if you don't see those and you can't describe them, you're not going to be able to create them. So that's what this study helps you see, helps you look at them, study them, so you can better create them on your asset. So you're not only making, you know, pretty colors and things like that, you're making shapes that tell you a list of things you're going to need to create, and you're also studying the silhouettes of those shapes as you go through. Okay, I would say word of caution on these. Some of these characters have thicker lines, so the line weight changes. Be careful with that, because if you follow the outer sketchier line, sometimes it makes them look all lumpy, and then the decisions aren't as clear. So if you're curious about any of that, or is it going the right way, just shoot me an image and say, hey, how's this looking? And I'll tell you. I also like that all of these are nice and touching. All the pieces are touching each other, right? This is because they layered them properly in Photoshop. If what happens is people try and create individual shapes and then put them next to each other and line them up that way, that doesn't work. Usually the reason for the gaps in between the shapes, I wish I had one I could show you, but just imagine having gaps in between all this. Everywhere you see a dark line, there's a gap. Why? What do you think they did to do their first read? Well, what they did was they did a magic wand selection inside the white and then just did a fill. And that doesn't work, right? It never looks good. It's kind of a cheap cop-out way to do it. And we end up with gaps and stuff and holes in the mesh, and it really hurts the, not identification, but the accuracy. So the shape tool, there are plenty of reasons why we're showing you that, why we want you to use it. The pen tool in Maya, or God, man, I just constantly say the wrong program. The pen tool in Photoshop, there's a reason for that tool. You'll see that later on in week 3, but for animators, you get to work with tangencies, right? You probably were super excited when you started working with it, and you're like, oh, what, a keyframe with tangent handles? Remind you of the graph out there? It was a little bit exciting. You're adjusting the weight in and out of your curve point. Yeah, and if you're animating and you're not using, well, I don't know, animators might be mad at me, or the animation instructors, but if you're not using weighted tangents yet, man, you're missing out. Weighted tangents are awesome. All right, so let's look at these. Okay, so we're looking for a proof of concept build. Secondary objects. I've gotten that email already a couple times. I've addressed it in lecture. I think I've answered the question 3 more times. Do I need to do the backpack? Do I need to do the pouches? Do I need to do this thing that they're holding? What's the answer? No, they are secondary to the main outfit pieces and parts that make up that character. So where does this one fall apart? Well, the gloves, the boots, they did a good job on the boots, terrible job on the gloves. The gloves are not reading the silhouette properly. Overall, though, and when I say terrible job on the gloves, we're talking one area out of the entire structure. We don't see any identification between the neck and the jacket collars. So I think maybe with all of them, you know, you can only hit up so much, right? But I would have wanted to see more accurate shapes and volumes and silhouette changes between the glove and the sleeve. I would have liked to have seen some sort of identification shape change between the neck. What they did really well was, I can tell it's that character. No ands if buts about it. That is that asset. They paid attention to the silhouette. You can see really accurate in the head shapes. They position, you know, they did overall, it's a really strong asset. The difference here is there's enough discrepancies. We may have gotten a low A versus a high A on that one. Areas of concern also go into its Dynamesh. It's real smooth and I can't see any of the faceting. Now, I don't want to see crazy faceting and all your normals, but when it's that smooth and I can't zoom in and see some of those faces showing, I kind of go, how much geometry are they using? Right? And we might be at where we're using too much. What's the poly count that I threw out there for your assets? I think it was just in the last class. Should we be in the millions? No. Should we be close to a million? No. 250, 500,000 is usually good for most characters. When does this change? If our character has a lot of volume, they obviously take up more space. They're going to have more geometry. They might creep up to 700,000, 800,000. They have a lot of gear, a lot of outfit pieces that we're trying to identify. These might be things that require a little bit more geometry, but an asset like this, we can very easily shape that out. I would say definitely less than 500,000. Here's another one. Do you think that qualifies as a proof of concept build? Down by the feet, yes. Everywhere else, I don't see any of that outfit identified. I would want to see, remember I said silhouette changes. Those cuffs, they're strong enough to equal some sort of an identification. The change between the shirt, belt, and pants, I should be able to see that line. These things, and again, I'll try to be as clear as possible with why I want them done and when you would do them and when you wouldn't. Why I want them done is it pushes your ability to get shape and learn how to sculpt in week one, right? Forces some extra tool usage. And also there is a lot of times, and there's call for a client, they say, can you do a quick mock-up of this so we can take a look at it? You're not going to spend a whole bunch of time, but you want enough of that asset that's readable on screen, proof of concept build. So it proves that the concept works in 3D space, and your clients can look at it and go, oh man, that reads really well. Or they say, oh, they feel a little thin here. But now you haven't wasted a month. You've wasted a couple hours of building this proof of concept build. So that's some of those. Now, some productions, purpose dictates process, right? Some productions require body blanks, right? A body underneath all the clothing. Some do, some don't. Some people want to block out that's less involved, you know, half of what we're doing. But know what you need to do, right? And then find your way to get there. So this one could have been pushed. I think they did a good job identifying the overall look and feel of the character, but it's lacking that proof of concept. They pushed the head a little bit, but not too much to where it hurt. This one here falters from the same thing. We've got these nice cuffs that break silhouette. We have a shirt being tucked in or sitting outside. They did a good job on the gloves, but they've kind of lost it in the middle, all throughout the center of this character. It's very clean, and it houses that nice shape and readability, which is hugely important, but they missed that little final touch just to kind of polish it up. Hopefully no one's doing this character. I found out that he was left in there and I ran out of time and I didn't go look for him and get rid of him. He's not a bad character. He just doesn't do well beyond week one. Once we get past week one, he's literally wearing one article of clothing, which when you learn how to do the break apart, you'll be like, what? my job's done, and you've spent 15 minutes on the character. So, and he's leaning for it, man. And any of you can stand like that without falling over? I can't. I think, huh? Michael Jackson, yeah, Michael Jackson, yeah, he probably can. I mean, he's an interesting character. I just think he doesn't hold well for the rest of the month. But again, readable, but not that proof of concept, right? We'd want to kind of flesh out some of that stuff. This character here. Now, this one has a lot of supplemental reference, not a lot, but there's some really key supplemental reference images that help create a better asset for this. But I would have liked to have seen the break-in silhouette on the gloves. I mean, it's a pretty simple character. The cape, do we need the cape? Do we need the hair? Oh, definitely not. No. Do we need the crown? No. Okay, so we'd be pushing some of these other things. We might identify visually the belt. Now, when I say identify, it still needs to be accurate. I do see a lot of people when they identify clothing structures, they're just like clay buildup, and they make a belt that looks like it's 4 inches thick, and I'm like, it looks like it's maybe 5 millimeters on the character. So you need to have that accurate. We're not just tagging shapes. They have to fit the character. So this one would have definitely been hit as a non-proof of concept build. It just needs more fleshing out. And this one here, again, same thing. Now, this is when we were doing Maya builds. We are no longer doing Maya builds. And Maya is a different story. You'll definitely, if you ever are building in Maya, Maya is great because Maya gives you vert control, absolute vert control. You can set up your polygon layout exactly the way you want so you can sculpt. So case in point, I still, if I'm going to make a likeness of somebody, I have a default head that I built in Maya years ago. I bring that in, I shape it really quickly to their image, and then I bring that into ZBrush because that now I know fits. I've got edges that fit the ocular cavity. I've got edges that fit the lip line. So as long as I quickly tag those in an image, I know that when I'm sculpting the detail within those major features, right? So it already starts off a little bit more accurate. I have that absolute control. But again, these are pretty good. Let's see if not that one. The first read is amazing. I really like that first read. These fall apart because they're strong shape-wise, really strong shape-wise. I mean, look at it. We got anatomy being read in there, but not a proof of concept build, right? Not at all. These are body blanks. Okay, this is not what I want to see. This one here is starting to go down the proof of concept build. I was really happy with it, but the rest is just nothing's being identified visually that sells that outfit or the shape. But that first read's really, really nice. Okay, these are more like it. Okay, so again, pretty strong first reads. And then we get into the proof of concept builds. Now you can see those elements, right? So people go, well, how far do you want me to push it? There you go. That's a great reference right there for you. This one here, you can see they opted to include the hood. I think somebody's doing this. No, you're doing the mask, but you can see how they did the hood in this one and kind of just glossed over the face, just focusing on the silhouettes. Right, that works out just fine. They know that in week 2, they need to now separate all that and build the head. Where did they go a little bit astray? Well, they started doing pouches and things like that. And I mean, I don't mind that kind of stuff. If you're blocking out extra elements, when do I not mind that? When do you think that wouldn't bother me? Exactly. When everything else looks like it should. But if you're doing all that extra stuff, but your core shapes are off and wrong, I would have said you were better off spending more time on your model. Here's another one. They put the little thing. Now this is a really good way. You can see she's got that mechanical arm and leg. I'm going to zoom in on this one. And they're using nothing more than the Damien standard. So they did everything symmetrically. And then they went through and they tagged up some of the stuff that kind of is readable on that arm to sell that it is slightly different. You can see here, they broke apart the boot shape, kind of refined the bottom. Could they have pushed a little bit more and maybe inflated a little bit of the outfit? Yeah, I think so, but overall still really strong. Now, why was it okay, right? I don't know if you really care about that, but there are reasons why it's okay this way. Because one, they had 6 to do. I almost wish they would have put this one as their second one. You can see they've identified everything. All right, basic head shape. This one is really strong as well. You can see they're getting that nice, heavy, long, open sleeve. We've got the belt. We've got the jacket. Now that's Dynamesh, right? Dynamesh is the one you're probably going to be able to get more of those localized shapes out of, because Dynamesh, that's what it's there for. And then that's one of the things you're like, now I get it. I get why people really like that in the beginning and establishing shapes and forms. On the Z-Sphere ones, you'll notice that things are a little bit more forced looking. They tried to get away with hiding an extra piece in there. But you can see less localized stuff. But we used to grade these as the first 2 that were submitted were the ones we gave a grade to, and everything else got hit for complete. Right, so as long as they hit a 70 visually, we marked them as complete, and that activated the score properly. But these are all, I mean, all these are pretty strong. I'd say this one's got good silhouette, but a little weak on the identification stuff. I think the head might be a little small. This one's a Maya build, so it's really nice for a Maya build. I think this one is the strongest, and then I'd go to probably this one, then this one, then that one. Right, so does that give you a better idea of where we need to go with what we have? Right? You can see what we had are very simple forms, very just kind of muted. We have the forms. We are looking at more like, can't remember which one that was. We're sitting right about here. Right, we're sitting right about here. It's complete. It has the volumes, it's got the posture, it's got the proportions. Now we're going to go in and push that proof of concept build, right? That's about where we're sitting at the completion mark, or where we stopped in the last class. Okay. I always like to throw this one up here. All my animators that hate modeling, this is an animator. He just took all your excuses away. Now, his reason for pushing for everything was, I want to model and animate my own stuff. So he actually built everything for the scenes and everything like that. So it's a pretty smart way of doing it. Okay, so we'll get Dyna 3. I don't think that one is there. I think that one's a different one. Z-Sphere 3 phase 1, Z-Sphere asset 2, Z-Sphere. I think it's this one, phase 1. We'll only know when we bring it up and look at it. Oh, okay, it's this guy. Okay, so you remember this was our Z-Sphere build. We finished it to phase 1 in our whatever we set up for our targets. Still getting nice read out of the structure, but still not that proof of concept. So now we need to look at where to go. So in this build, I'm going to look at my stuff here. We're only at 40,000 polygons, right? And we're getting some pretty decent shape at 40 grand. That's awesome. So even if I subdivide twice, my first subdivision will bring me about to 120,000. My next one will bring me about 500,000. So I have 2 more subdivisions that I can work with here to get more shape. And that's quite a bit if you're pushing the shapes correctly. Okay, so we're going to go geometry. Let me make sure I know exactly where I'm at. Okay, we're on subdivision 4. Okay, and we might tag this a little bit and try and get readability a little bit more on this, and then go up a little bit higher. We will be using masking in some cases. We will be using just straight sculpture technique. And in some cases, we might be getting into a couple other fancier ways of like flattening the feet or anything. I'm going to try and keep it simple, though, just to kind of keep everybody on the same page. So now Z-sphere is always going to have issues at star junctions, so we need to kind of maintain those zones, figure out, you know, what we can do, or just know that, hey, there's going to be a big giant Z-sphere there, or a big star junction. That's going to be a problem. That's not going to smooth all that well. But let's see what we can do. Maybe we can do some work down in the boot area to kind of get that going. If you want red wax, I would get rid of the red wax and I'd go with something like the basic gray material. This does make it harder sitting on your background. But what is really nice is it's grayscale. What happens with the red wax is you start pushing more form, you get haziness in your sharp lines and stuff, and it makes it hard. And sometimes where I'm like, that looks like one piece of geometry, it doesn't look like you broke it up at all in week 2. And they're like, no, I didn't. I'm like, well, there's a reason I said get rid of the red wax, because it doesn't look like it's broken up. So we kind of have that more back and forth. So, but let's go in here. I'm gonna try and see what we can do with the resolution that we have. Okay, so you can see right here, we have a little bit of something going on. All right, so I'm gonna look at masking. Now, you can always mask manually. So control, and you'll notice something about the masking. It's kind of geometry resolution dependent. You see how it's masking vertices. And if I don't have a lot of resolution, my mask line is going to be all jagged because I just don't have the resolution to get a clean mask. But I might be able to get it to do what I need it to do. And for right now, I am going to work on both sides. Week 2, we start deleting and only working on one. Okay. Now, I want to affect this area, but I've masked that area. So it's usually easier to mask the smaller area and then invert. So I'm just going to invert that a little bit. And then I'm going to go in here and we're going to use, we can either use brushes, but I'm going to use kind of a broad stroke thing here. And we're going to use the deformation palette. And we're going to be looking at inflate, XYZ. Okay, what this is going to do is it's actually going to inflate the geometry or deflate the geometry. So we're only going to be affecting that light area there. We'll go ahead and inflate in the negative. You can see we start getting that ridge. Now, our geometry is pretty low res here. We're not really getting a nice clean line. We'll address that, but this at least gives me something to tag. We are going to lose, right? Whether we inflate outward on the upper part of the leg or we deflate the foot, we're going to have work to do. So the next thing we're going to do is kind of reestablish some of the shape. But I'm going to go ahead and invert. So now we're locking down the foot, and I'm doing that so I can and if we smooth that out a little bit, we'll get that stronger line. Our geometry, again, is pretty low res, so we will be smoothing out stuff. If we don't do this right, we'll be obliterating any shape that we spent time putting in. Now, we will be running into a lot of alignment issues. Just be ready for that, I guess, is what I would say. Try and balance between the two as best as you can. I'm going to go and clear that canvas. Now you can see at least we have a readable line right there. But what's happening to our topology? Stretching, it's tearing. Remember that kiting that I talked about? It's tearing, it's stretching. The squares don't look like squares anymore. If we light up Shift F for wireframe, you can see we are starting to pull that geometry. Now, one of the reasons we're pulling it is it probably would have been better if I was modeling this in Maya. Wouldn't you agree that you would have an edge that goes right with that? Do we have the ability to do that? Well, we might be able to finagle that. Am I going to worry too much about it? Probably not right now, because we have a whole nother resolution we can go up. And you'd be amazed at one resolution and what it can do for your model. So I'm going to go to geometry, and we're going to go ahead and just divide. And you can see Control D will do that on the fly. But we're going to go ahead and divide one time. That's going to help me get a much nicer shape. And we're at 162,000. So hopefully you'll see again, don't need to kill this model with geometry to get a good look. We can get a nice readable look with less. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring my brush down a little bit, and I can mask again, right? If I want to not affect this area, I can come through here and say, you know what, let's go ahead and mask that off. And then I can take this and kind of tuck it underneath. I'm going to smooth a little bit. I'm going to go and invert. And then maybe we start getting into some other brushes, a little bit of inflate. You have to be careful with inflate. You can make a pretty good mess with inflate if not used properly. You can see I'm just kind of lightly dusting through the area. Come on. Side of my computer is giving me a little bit of a problem there. All right, and it might be a little bit wonky. You can smooth a little bit, even that out. And now we can maybe get into something like the Damien Standard. Damien Standard, sometimes you just take a brush and you go, what does that do? You just try it. Why am I not afraid? Because I can undo. Okay, so with the Damien Standard, I can come in here and I'd probably, when I'm using a Damien Standard, something like Lazy Mouse starts to come into play. What is Lazy Mouse? Well, remember, when this program came out, we didn't have these. We had mice, trackballs, and whatever, laser beam mice and all kinds of stuff. The ones you had to pop the ball out and clean, right? That's what we had to use. So we weren't very steady with that. So Lazy Mouse averaged your movement and drug the icon behind it. We still use it when we want nice refined arcs. So stroke, Lazy Mouse, the hotkey is L to turn it on and off. And your biggest help with this is going to be Lazy Radius. Yes. Are you talking about smoothing and blurring? Are you talking about smoothing your stroke? Yes, yeah. So watch now when I go and use it, you see how it's dragging behind? You will get this sense of just stamped on details, almost like if you took clay and you just took a carving knife and went and pushed in with it, those big wooden blades, and pushed in. And all it does is push the detail in. If you're trying to sell overlap, you can't just use it and call it a day. You'll see this on, I think it's on this one here. Yes, everything's identified, but there's always some kind of a negative, just like there's always a positive. You see how the layering of the vest and stuff, it just kind of feels pushed in, right? Just feels like somebody carved in those shapes, right? Instead of really working on, this feels like it's flat and then drops back, and that the shape is less refined. I would probably tag all the details, get them as nice as we can within the allotted time that you've given yourself for that phase, and then really start refining in phase 3. So we would say phase 1 was getting it complete. Phase 2 is starting to identify some of these shapes. Phase 3 is, if we have time, going back and really kind of refining those. So that kind of refinement looks like, and I don't know if you can see it, but I see it. You see how this bulges out a little bit? Okay. If this is metal, that's not going to be doing that. So what you're going to do there is, when we carve in that line, if we really want to put that line in there, I'm going to make my brush smaller. Then I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to smooth just on this side of that shape. And now you can see that it drops down a little. It's just more of a straight transition. If I smooth up here, it's gone. So I'm trying to keep myself smoothing just on the side of the shape I need to refine. Does that make sense? All right, now instead of it going and bulging out, it's more of a straight line, a little bit more refined. Okay, but this is how we go through and we start tagging the shapes, right? And you can see that again with very little geometry, we get a nice clean line. This is unfinished. This is more on the finished side. Cool. Okay. Let's go ahead and do a little bit more. We're going to separate the pant leg. We're going to look at a fancier way of masking. And the things I'm showing you now are exactly the same way you're going to be approaching the Dynamesh build. There's going to be a difference. I'm up-resing subdivisions here. With Dynamesh, do I use subdivisions? No, I'm using the resolution slider. When I need more, I move the resolution slider up and I update my surface, adding more geometry. So that's really the difference there. One is a global distribution. This is kind of a subdividing, and we already have more geometry in the appendages than we do in the main area of the character. So it's a little bit of a different workflow, but the tools themselves, I'm using them exactly the same way. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to go ahead and adjust that pant leg. So let's bring back this, and this will be interesting. So I'm going to mask a specific way. I'm going to switch my masking brush, right? So one of the reasons it looks like there's 8,000 brushes here is because there's 5 of the same exact brush, but slightly altered, okay? So masking is one of them. You see mask lasso, mask pen curve, mask pen, mask circle, rectangle, square, right? These are all masking brushes. So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to choose the mask lasso. This has been my new favorite, instead of trying to paint your masks all the time. And you can see we have a little bit of an arc right there. So what I'm going to do there is hold control, just like I would to mask. I'm just going to draw out my shape that I want, just like a lasso select inside of Maya. We can do the same thing here. We go, oh man, that doesn't line up. These boots do not line up front and side. They just don't. But I can maybe use this and sweep through the front. I can mask anytime I want. Yeah, okay, finally got it. Oh my goodness, terrible. How do we unmask? Control Option. All right, and if you don't want to do that, just switch back to your pen, Control, Alt, and you can manually unmask. So whatever works best for you, whatever your brain clicks to better, do that. That's really what it's about, right? It's about finding your way. Finding your way. How many of you want to, I mean, anybody that's in the military probably is like, you're crazy. But I always want to do that thing where they just drop you in the jungle and all you carry is what you can put in your backpack, and then they come find you in a week and hopefully you've made it. I think it'd be fun. No? Yeah, okay. See what everybody's made of, you know? All right, so we got that little line there. Now, this is going to be a slightly different thing. You notice I only have the knee itself. I'm going to go and invert, and I'm just going to inflate that a little bit because we have that kind of blousing happening on the pant as it's stuffed into that boot. kind of like what I got on mine. So again, I'm going to go ahead and use deformation, inflate that up. Oh, but what about the upper part? That's not what we want. I'm going to work with that, right? This is just to get that break in the line. And if I want, we can move, right? If we want to move these things, you got to go ahead and tag the GPS locator. And then we can take this and say, let's pull that down a little bit so we get more of that overlap. Okay, so I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go back to draw. I'm going to clear my mask. And now we're going to make that shape look better. Right? Again, sometimes you just got to get it there. Thank goodness we don't have a lot of geometry, because now I can just smooth that out. Had we littered this with millions of polygons too soon, a move like that would have been a little bit harder, because it would have been holding that shape. Okay, and I'm going to keep the green alive. Move that to kind of hit that major silhouette. We're not worried about the wrinkles. We're worried about structural identifications. Okay, let's go ahead and hide that. Let's see what a smooth does here. I'm going to be real gentle with the smooth. Just kind of tapping. Broken line. That was a bad mask on my part. Watch how we fix it. Reads well enough for me for the block out. Just going to smooth it a little bit more, and then maybe Damien standard it. Let's go ahead and drop into the inflate. And what's really nice is all the brushes you've been using, it will stack them up at the top there. So if you can't find them, if you are like, well, I want to find it, just hit, if you know what it starts with, inflate, you just hit the I key and it'll bring up all the brushes that are in that group. I believe the inflate is BIN. Yeah. And go through and just kind of inflate through there, rounding it off a little bit. Now you'll notice it is kind of stamping it. So usually when you do a detail like that, you want to smooth it at the upper portion. Again, to blend it in. You can see from the side there, not looking too shabby. You see clear identification of those pieces. We're setting the right thickness. We still have to shape up that foot a little bit, but we're now building into that proof of concept. We would go straight all the way through the body, hitting up those main changes first, and then identifying some of the surface stuff. Right, he's wearing this interesting little pad thing, and he's got the big shoulder pad areas. So this is all just, I would mask that off and inflate it slightly, and then smooth through. If we need another one, let's see what one more subdivision takes us to, and what kind of shapes, how much like sharpness we'll be able to get. So I'm going to go into geometry, and let's do one more. At 162, we should be okay. 649. So we crept over that 500, but you know, if we're really targeting some higher level, smaller, thinner, sharper shapes, this is, I wouldn't want to subdivide again. All right, this is where I'm going to want. If I subdivide again, I might be tempted to get shapes that I shouldn't be getting, right? Remember the money thing? Remember that? I was talking about it. If I give my son more money, he's going to spend more money. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, your stories do mean something. Yes, they do. Right. So right there, let's go ahead and add this shape. I'm going to use the wonderful. Let's do it. Yeah. We're going to do it. We're going to do the mass lasso. Oh, man. You ready for this? Here we go. Oh, terrible. Look at that. I'm going to go all the way around. I didn't like my line anyway. Beautiful. How nice is that? Just go here, invert. Invert's one of those words that you can almost say like power with. Invert, like, well, I'll wake you guys up. The lights dim a little bit too much. All right, so we got that. Now we're just gonna go ahead and inflate a little bit. Oh, I wanna do a little bit more. And go around and now refine that shape. And sculpt on it, we can sharpen it up. Now, one thing to note about the Damien standard is it's not always about pulling shape or pushing shape in. If you invert this brush and you have your lazy mouse on, right, you can pull ridges and things like that. Now, that's obviously not what we want there. We'll probably very gently kind of go around it and really make sure we got that nice line, right? But this is, again, where we're going with it. So, I mean, that looks nice, readable. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at a couple other things. I want to look at some like building back up the foot and flattening off the bottom of the foot. This is always a common thing. People have these boots and whatnot, and it's all lumpy looking. There's a couple brushes that we can get into using. Right, so this one here, right, that whole foot needs to be brought up. I'm probably gonna do a little bit of moving and whatnot, and it's not gonna be accurate to where we want it, but let's go ahead and make the bottom a little bit cleaner and nicer looking. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna mask the bottom and then invert. Now, since this is not Dynamesh, right? So Dynamesh is going to be a little bit of a freer work form. I think what I'm going to have to do is before I do this, I'm going to have to do a little bit of prepping on the surface. Just kind of bring this stuff down and shape the foot a little bit more. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling the side down. You can see we lost a lot of shape messing with it. Now, if I want to go back down a resolution, I can do that with this type of subdivided geometry. So if I have an easier time working with less topology to get that foot back into position, I'm going to do that. And if you find that you're pulling the front of the foot or the bottom of the foot through the top of the foot as you're trying to reshape, then we're going to have to look at an option. It's under brush, auto masking, and you'll see back face masking. This happens a lot, right? If I'm trying to shape the hands, or if I'm here and I say, let me go ahead and sculpt that, you see how it pulled the bottom of the foot with it. We definitely don't want that. Back face masking will solve that. Let's see, let's go ahead and take a little bit of a structural approach. Just going to switch to my move. Just kind of trying to get a little bit more of an accurate shape there. Let's turn off lazy mouse for that thing. At that lower res, right, we can work with that larger base shape. Okay, now I'm going to go through here and flatten off the bottom of the foot. So your move icon here can be moved, right? So if you hold Option, you'll notice that the little lock opens up. It's almost like hitting the D key in Maya, and then we can position. Now, there are other brushes we'll be looking at next week. If you know how to use them, they're great. Things like the clip brush, trim, that kind of stuff. You see, we flatten that up pretty good. If we don't like it or we don't feel like we didn't do it enough, just go back, scale some more. Okay. Now, another thing that you might be into and might help you generate shape. One of my favorite, if you've ever done whittling, right? One of the fun things to do if you ever go on a camping trip, everyone's got their knives, right? Everyone has to bring a knife if you're going on a camping trip. You go and you find a stick, and then you try and visually see something, like a duck, a serpent, or something like that. And you kind of carve it out of that stick while you're talking around the campfire. So this trim dynamic brush is very much like that. You can go through and just start planing off a surface. That lanes out. People get tired, All right, so you can see that I put that little lip. You see that? Let's go ahead and hide that. You see that little lip on that boot? A nice boxed off toe. I can keep on doing that. I can start hitting up the planes of the boot. And again, it's not for everybody. Some people really enjoy that workflow. Some don't. I think it's a nice way. Kind of run an edge on something, or just kind of, oh. And get that more angular style into the boots there. That'll work, Dynamesh or this all day long. Yes. So if you have any kind of a mask, just hold control. Now they did bring in another, I'll give you two ways. Control click in space will invert. Then there's also control I will invert. No problem. Now, none of this stuff is any good if you don't have strong, solid foundational forms, right? You're just going to be fighting all this stuff. I do think, right, there'll be times when I'll go ahead and I'll tag something. I'll put a line on the asset just so I can better gauge it to the reference, knowing damn well that I'm going to smooth it out and obliterate it, right? I do what I need to do just in that moment to kind of get a better read on it. This is also why you'll see people put hair on their characters in this week. It helps them see that shape. I would, if you are going to do that, definitely do the hair as a separate piece. Do not spend too much time on it. Just use it as a, I need to rough this out, you know, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, you know, you're ignoring that. You see kind of where we're going with it, right? You can see you work one area, you kind of work your way all the way through. And at the end, you'll have something that's got a nice proof of concept feel. I will bring up the Dynamesh one just so you can see the upresing, right? And how this would play into the upresing. Because with Dynamesh, you know, or sorry, with this, you kind of really have to be gentle with it because you can't just yank and pull geometry and then update it, right? You have to kind of work with what's there. And there's some things you're just gonna be like, yep, that's gonna be as good as it is. So I can't remember where I put it. I started saving them somewhere and they were saving completely in the wrong folder. Here it is. Save changes? No, it's good practice, right? Okay, so this is exactly where we left this one. So remember on the last one, we were at between 140 to 600 something, I think, but no more than that. We were getting some good shapes without going higher. This one here is still at 35,000. So it's kind of interesting that the other one was finished at 40,000. This one's at 35, and all I need are the hands, right? To get it complete, not to have it score well, but to get it complete. So roughly the same type of resolution need. On this one here, though, you're going to start noticing a difference with Dynamesh. If things are too close, it will fuse those together. You have to ask yourself, if the shape I'm trying to get, does it fit inside of each one polygon? Are the polygons larger than what I'm trying to sculpt? If they are, you're going to lose. Anytime you might shape it and get it looking nice and then update your Dynamesh and poof, it's gone. And you're like, where did my shape go? Because it smooths it out. It just kind of blankets it with this base level topology. Okay, so if I were to go in here and say, all right, well, let's go ahead and try and establish her neck piece and get that visual reference in there. Let's see if we can even get that in there. I still have my mask lasso. Let's hide that. And that's going to be a real rough shape. You can see we're running into problems because it's not, the model's not lined up. Remember the last class I was saying it might need to be shifted over a little bit. We're definitely going to start running into issues there. I'm gonna have to hand print that, I think. That looks beautiful, right? No, that looks terrible, right? We don't have any amount of resolution to get there. So what were we starting to pull those shapes at on the other model? 140, 150 to the 600. So we need to be, once we get the model done, we need to up-res it. If you don't up-res it, you're never going to get the shape control that you need. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so this isn't going to work. We can already see that we can't even get the shape of that little line there. So if I inflate that up, it's not going to turn out right. So we go back to our Dynamesh. And we're gonna, let's see what doubling it does. I don't think doubling it's gonna do anything drastic. I'm gonna go ahead and shift, touch the surface, control, drag, let go. And you can see there, if we wanna try, we're starting to get stuff that might work out, but still overall, we're pretty scarce. This would be better for like larger things as I try and go ahead and refine the edge of the dress, make sure that it reads right in all directions. You're gonna wanna look at it like this and switch to your move, make your brush a little larger. Right, it should be kind of rounded. You can see the back there, not looking the way it should. Actually, that might be too much. Let's go ahead and kick it down. So we don't work with just going down in resolution anymore. We actually have to update. You see how easier, much easier that smooths out. Now there's another brush that might work out here. The pinch. Helps kind of pull that shape. Go ahead and update. You see we've lost some of the crispness of that. Just going to smooth out in that line. I might pinch that again. And sculpt like I play video games. Yeah, bending their own head. People that are driving like that, doing notes. Anybody else playing Borderlands 3? Dude, that game chugs, man. I'm trying to play, anytime you go in a split screen, it's like playing an old Super Nintendo, man. It's terrible. Well, I mean, it literally freezes up. I read some articles last night. It's been a problem since day one. They haven't fixed it yet. Well, my PC is young, probably, no, I think it's older than some of you in the class. Right? Does the school get, no, it's from 2008. But yeah, I got the old Xbox One there, and that thing is not like that game at all. All right, so you can see we can refine this shape pretty nicely. We will lose some as we update, but for up here, we're definitely going to need a little bit more. Yeah, what's up? So you were using the rake brush on the surface and it wasn't doing anything. Yeah. Don't know. without seeing it happen. You could have had something masked that might have been masked. You might have accidentally dropped down another tool and it was working on that, but there was just this giant one that was hiding any of that. Yes, I don't think you would have had Spotlight on. Did you have Spotlight on? Okay, Spotlight, I mean, it's very specific. You got to go up and turn it on, and then there's an image floating there. But yeah, if you have that on, it won't work. So what I would need to see is you can either do a quick screen capture and send that to me, or just send me a YouTube link or something like that. Just make it unlisted so people aren't watching. Or just if you got somebody in the lab, say, hey, what's going on with it? I would guess either a mask. I would guess Spotlight projection, but I don't think you would have been into that yet. Sometimes the brushes will, if you turn on backface masking, I know with Z-sphere topology, it actually almost inverts, so you're literally only able to push in and not out. Like it does some weird stuff there. But other than that, I mean, it should work unless your tablet wasn't working. Those would be the only things I can think of that would cause that. Because Dynamesh, but here's the thing, if you're updating your Dynamesh all the time, you're clearing your masks anyway, and you should know, because if it's masked, I mean, it's quite a bit different color there. So yeah, I'd have to see it going and see what could be the problem. Yeah, what I would recommend doing is dropping out of your edit, clearing your canvas, redropping your tool, back into edit. Everything should be back, right? Because it'll drop it the right size and everything like that. So if there's anything funky there. If not, yeah, Caleb can look at it. Maybe you might have to see. I don't know if that works the same way as Maya, but export it out and bring it back in. I don't know. It's probably something simple. Hopefully. Man, they sent all kinds of. Sorry about those calendar updates. They're panicking because normally training for Hall of Fame happens like a month before the event, and we're all getting training sessions 2 days before the event. So we're all like, what? The person that used to do it quit to go to another job. So this one person freaking out. They are panicked. All right, so where are we at now? We're at 236,000. We might be able to start getting that shape. I would definitely want to be thinking about, situating this, but because we're, just trying to kind of work through it. And see, we get a little bit better line. Not the best though. Hold on. It's still up. There we go. Now, I don't know what this looks like on the back. If it doesn't have a point, I'm doing something completely wrong. Let's take a look. I think there's a back image here. Awesome. There it is. Looks like it's just a sweeping line. So again, why your reference is so important. It'll keep you from making mistakes. Okay, we're gonna go and invert that. We're gonna see, maybe we need to up-res a little bit more. But where we're at now, though, I don't think I would up-res. I would start taking it up in slower increments and making sure that I'm hitting the larger shape changes. So whole model's done. We go to the larger volume changes things. We up-res a little bit. We go to the next stage. We up-res a little bit. We go to the next one. We up-res a little bit. You don't want to jump all the way to the end right out of the gate there. So we'll go and inflate. Now let's go ahead and what happens when we update. All right, see how it gets a little softer. So if we really want to hold that shape and really work with it, every time, if I go through and I refine like we did on the other model, every time I update, it only can hold as much resolution as that resolution allows. So you might find yourself nudging up your resolution. You might say, well, let's see what, 432 gives us. Okay, that holds it a little bit better. Let's double check our topology. We're at 390,000. We can go up a little bit more and kind of creep towards, right? It's a little more forgiving. You can go up by 40,000, 50,000, 100,000, whereas in subdivisions, it's 4 times whatever you got every time you go up. So you have to be careful with this. It's a slightly different workflow. As far as managing your shapes, it's pretty much the same thing. How you work with your resolution, that does change, okay? But requirements will be exactly the same. You need to target those proof of concept builds, make sure that you're complete, your model has all their appendages, and go from there. Questions? All righty. Well, as usual, meet me outside. Let me tear down. I don't know if the other guys coming in or the other classes coming in, but I don't want to hold them up. So out in the hallway if you have any questions. All right. Online, I'll see you later. If you need anything, let me know. Have a good one.